Hello, Little Rock Board of Directors. My name is Jimmy Brown, and I live at 15621 Sorrells Road here in Little Rock, Arkansas. I'm making this quick video for you to try to encourage you to vote against rezoning application Z-5817-K. I recognize that you have a lot of zoning things going on and a lot of zoning applications from Mr. John Reese to try to change some things and people challenge them. So I'm making this video to hopefully give you some context as to this particular application and why we're respectfully requesting that you vote against it. I'll apologize for the length of this video, try to make it shorter, but there's a lot to this. So hopefully I can get you the key points here. The first thing I want to talk about is where are we talking about? If we go to, second, oops, there we go. This is a screenshot from the Pulaski County Property Records Database. You'll notice the red circle here is what we are referring to. I'm going to try to use these same markings in other slides so you can kind of have the same context. There's three properties he's trying to combine into one. The white and bluish striped part above that, that's a piece of property that, as we understand, he's trying to acquire to increase the volume of this. I don't have any insight into what the current status is of that because the records don't show it as processed yet. The purple arrow points where my home is, my personal home where I live. And the white area over the left-hand side, that is showing where there's a little piece of land owned by the Arkansas Highway Department. You can also see, if you look to the right of this, Taziki's, Regions Bank, Burger King, those are the other commercial properties that are close by. If we go to our next slide, this is kind of the same things used to overlay to a Google Maps picture. Again, the white stripe shows, white little thing there shows the piece of property that's owned by RDOT. Purple arrow goes straight to my house. My property goes down to Cantrell. Again, the Taziki's, Cloud Dental, Regions. Over the far left, you will notice where it says Nutrition Home, that circle. That is actually around one of Mr. Reach's other properties called Pinnacle Creek that we'll talk about in a little bit. And all of this, if you also look up in the lower left-hand side, you see this goes over what's called Good Earth, if you're familiar with that. So this is kind of the overlay. When my wife and I bought our property in 2016, we were actually concerned about the commercial development coming from the Taylor Loop node westward. And we actually did some investigation to try to find out what was going on because we felt that was a big impact on our purchasing decision. What we found, go to the next slide here. Oops. Nope. Is that the current zoning as it reads now, you'll notice that there's two parts of those three parcels Mr. Reach is trying to combine. Those are currently zoned PDO. They were designed for a medical office, which we'll get into some more detail about later. And it was supposed to be, and its current was zoned, at least, that was approved in January 2016, about 8 months before we bought our house. And actually the far left or far west property, that little upside down boot, that's actually currently still zoned R2. We actually inquired about purchasing that in 2018, late 2018, I believe it was, or middle of 2018. Interestingly, we were going to purchase it, possibly develop it, possibly do something else with it. But the price we were told was out of whack with what the market was, although somehow Mr. Reese acquired it for 70% of that. I can't comment on that. But that's kind of the overlay from the current zoning. You notice these bluish checks all along the place. That's because this is part of the Highway 10 Design District Overlay. There are some other there's some variances being required for this particular application that I'm not going to get into. Ms. Don Pacifica, my neighbor, I understand will probably be speaking on those on the 19th. But that's just to give you some context there. Now, this is the current zoning. Let me show you the current land use. This, again, is the current land use as of April 3rd. This area is supposed to be small suburban office. So again, there's a high activity commercial node down Taylor Loop. It's supposed to be a mixed use node right there next to it. And then there's lower intensity down to where the neighbors are. We're not questioning that this property be developed. What we are saying is that what Mr. Reese is wanting to do to it is too drastic of a change and too much of a zoning change from what it's intended to be. In fact, Mr. Reese's attorney made a comment at the November zoning, I believe it was the January zoning meeting, about the 3-story storage piece that he actually presented to you guys about in March. I believe I said to you guys in March that homeowners, when they purchase a piece of property, they have the opportunity to see what is supposed to go in near them. My wife and I did that, and this is what we found when we researched it, and this was a major impact on our purchase decision. I would submit to you that developers not only have the same opportunity, but have an obligation to actually investigate this in pretty much detail, because they have more resources, more knowledge, and more experience with these areas. I'm not a developer, but just as a citizen, I've been able to find records going back to at least 2007 when the Burger King was put in place of people in the neighborhood saying, hey, we are concerned about zone creep. We are concerned about these things, becoming more intense than we thought they were going to, we were understood they were going to be when we bought our homes. I don't understand why. I'm not sure why that was not done here, or if it was even done. But clearly, this is what the intended use is, and what Mr. Reese is proposing is a lot different. Now, as for the context, what I want to show you is this is what was approved on consent agenda by the board in January of 2016. And I didn't own my property at that point, but my understanding is that this particular plan was actually supported by a lot of the same neighbors who were challenging this one. Medical office, 8,000 square feet, 46 parking spaces, only about 3,000 square feet per construction per acre, and only one entrance onto Cantrell. As I understand it, the neighbors supported this one. That's why it was on consent agenda. I'm not going to show what Mr. Reese is proposing, again, to why that's dramatically different than what has been previously approved and supported by the neighbors. This is Mr. Reese's current plan. You'll notice that it is about 29,000 square feet, 5,000 square feet of restaurant space, 20,000 square feet of a retail center, and then up in the upper left-hand corner, circled by that kind of burgundy circle, is 4,000 square feet of outdoor storage. Now, that's an interesting one because typically we don't see outdoor storage in Rock City Code up until we get to the C4 open display district, which is like, along the highway or whatever. You'll also notice 3 blue circles, the one in the upper left-hand corner and 2 down at the bottom. Those are where he's proposing driveways. The one in the upper left-hand corner, that is the driveway onto Rummel Road. That has been a point of contention since the start of this, because Rummel Road is the only entrance or exit point for 58 families. If that gets blocked off, we have some real issues. The city has said that they want that exit to be there to have a westbound emergency access in case one of these are blocked off. And as I understand it from talking to Mr. Jamie Collins, that's because there's that commercial node at Taylor Loop, there's going to be some expansion of Highway 10, and there's going to be a berm, or rather a median that's going to stop in the middle of the road. Now, the latest thing I've seen by Highway Department, it's going to stop kind of right here, down by where that the far right blue circle is. But as Mr. Collins says, they don't have that confirmed yet from the Highway Department. The city has said they're willing to support that Rummel exit being permanently blocked off and gated with a Knox box. Okay, we're not happy about it. We can live with it. However, I'm not sure if you can see it or not, but in the upper left-hand corner there, it just says emergency access point. Mr. Reese has taken out the language from this, saying that we'll be permanently gated with a Knox box. And we have concerns that he may at some point in the future try to change this into a driveway, which would be a very big concern. We'll get to in a minute. But it's clearly not something we want to do. The 2 driveways on Cantrell are concerned because right now, even right now, it's difficult to turn left during rush hour and difficult to turn right sometimes, frankly, because of all the turns and all the traffic along Cantrell. I now want to get into some of the other concerns we have about all these driveways and such. And just for the record, Mr. Gray Williams has become a kind of our local neighborhood expert on all the site distance and things like that. So I'll let him get into that, but I want to point out a couple of things about this for sake of clarity. Engineering staff has basically said that, there should be a single driveway across the center. Okay, that's where it should be. It also says they need to be at least 300 feet from any other driveways. It's only 580 feet, according to Google Maps, between Rummel and the Tzatziki's exit. So having 2, there's no way either of those can be 300 feet from either of those points. Also, the driveway on Rummel has to stay gated Knox box and never turn into a commercial driveway, because if it ever does, it will be less than 200 feet from my residential driveway, and definitely not the 150 feet from the side property line. So those are very clearly things that need to be addressed with this plan that cannot be addressed now. Also, the November Planning Commission meeting, this was discussed at both the November and the February Planning Commission meetings. We'll get to that in a moment. Mr. Reese said that he wanted the second driveway on Cantrell to have westbound emergency access, but that actually conflicts with the city telling us they need the one on Rummel. The third thing I'll say about this is that I actually sent Mr. Reese an email on January 3rd in response to some information he sent me from his traffic engineer talking about the need for the two driveways. When I read through that thing for the traffic engineer, it's talking about the traffic flow, the high volume, and how this will help manage the high volume into that center, which goes back to our concerns about the current center. But it doesn't say anything about our concerns about being able to turn into and out of Cantrell from Rummel. I actually sent Mr. Reese an email on January 3rd making the point that, hey, I don't see anything that addresses that concern. Haven't heard back from him yet. And I'll actually mention that email a few other times later. The next thing I want to show you is I actually have overlaid that plan onto the Google Maps picture. And as you can see, I'm not sure if this is to scale or not. I actually tried to match this up by matching his drawing where Rummel is on the left-hand side up to the actual picture. If this goes through as currently planned, I mean, it's going to be, again, high intensity thing. It's literally going to overlap with where my property is. And you can see they're very close. Again, Rummel to Zeke's driveway is 580 feet. You can see there's no way those two driveways are 300 feet from those things. So again, it's a lot in a small space. In fact, if we go to the next slide, we can see that the Planning Commission recommended denial of this because they say it's too intense for the location intended use. We agree with that. Now, at the February Planning Commission meeting, we made that point. Mr. Reese made got into some technical issues of what intensity actually means or doesn't mean from a development standpoint. So I'm not going to get into that term intensity, but I am going to talk about amount of stuff built per acre. As you can see here on the far left side, we see Mr. Reese's proposal, the Tzatziki's, the Norwegians, and the Burger King. What he's proposing is more than 4 times the average construction per acre of those 3 properties. The number of parking spaces he's asking for is almost double what we see at the Tzatziki's, which is the next one over. So clearly I haven't been able to find the ones for Regis or Burger King. I just frankly haven't had time to dig into those approvals, but I'm sure if I found maybe similar. Clearly he's expecting this to be a high volume, high traffic, high intensity location. And that's, again, gets to our biggest concern, which is it's supposed to be a step down, small, quiet area. But this is the concern. If we go to our next slide and we compare this to his other nearby properties, Pinnacle Creek, which you will see, which if you recall is that green circle on the right side of the other slides, that's only about 25,000 square feet. His other piece, Pinnacle Station, which is on the other side of the Taylor Loop node, is also about 25,000 square feet. His 2 other nearby properties, Chenal Curve and Shops at Chenal, those are both about 22,000 square feet, although I will go ahead and point out that all these numbers come from Pulaski County property records. Pulaski County property records shows Shops at Chenal as only being 22,000 square feet with 1 building. The project's incomplete, and there are 2 buildings being built there, so I'm not sure what's going on there. So there may be some information that I don't have, but the point I'm making, which I think is valid regardless, is that what he's going to do is not only more intense than the nearby things, more intense than the intended use, but it's actually bigger per square footage than a lot of his other properties that are nearby. So, and it is, again, literally across the street from my house. Intended use is another concern. Again, Ms. Don Pacific, I think, is going to talk a little bit more about this, but the short version is this is supposed to be a suburban office, quiet office, low intensity, during the week 9 to 5, not much on the weekends, not much in the after hours. What Mr. Reese is requesting here is he just says all office. It's not clear if that also includes 01 and 03. I actually sent my email to him on January 3rd, which I mentioned before. I asked that question for clarity. I have not heard back yet. He's asking for all C1 conditional uses and all these other uses here. Some of these are actually overlapping with what's in C1, but this is what he's asking for. Obviously, it's a lot more intense than the intent. This also gets to hours of operation. Now, again, as I mentioned, you saw from the picture how close my house is to this. Since he's cleared that land, I can literally see to the left of me, walk on my front door, look to the right, I can see if Tzatziki's had his lights on or not. So obviously, once this rest of this gets built, I'll be able to see all that. That's how close it is. The Tzatziki's, when it was approved, because it was originally supposed to be small office as well. The board actually, and we think this was a proper move, put in a condition that it had to be lights out by 10 p.m. It would be reasonable to expect that this location be as restricted, if not more so, to what is on the Tzatziki's property. Mr. Reese said he wants exceptions. If there are exceptions, they need to be very specific, very narrow, and very clearly spelled out. What I have right here is a copy on the right-hand side is a copy and paste from the latest version of the application. Again, 6 a.m. to midnight, 6:30 to 11 p.m. Monday through Saturday, 6 a.m. to 9:30 on Sunday. Why it's early on Sunday, I don't know. But this was something that I brought up to Mr. Reese when I first talked to him in early 2020, and he didn't seem to have a lot of interest in shuffling that. I have to be honest with you, since he started clearing that land, it's become a bigger concern for myself and my wife, because we can, like I said, we can hear the excavators, we can hear the trucks from our property. So this is obviously a concern, and we also want to know when there's going to be deliveries and trash pickups. My bedroom is on the west side of our house, so we obviously that's a concern. So that's a very important issue to us to get some clarity on the hours of operation. A couple of things I want to point out: the statute of neighbors. In August 2020, Mr. Reese had another application that the board unanimously voted against, and we thank you again for that. And you asked them to go ask for him to work with the neighbors. A committee was put together to represent the different neighborhoods and different interests. I'll let Mr. Don Pacifico, Mr. Dick Stoker, and Mr. Gray Williams talk about some of the specifics of how those meetings went. But the short version is there's not a agreement right now. I'll also point out that the November 18th, 2021 Planning Commission meeting, Mr. Reese was granted a third deferral. And if you guys want, you can go back and see how that whole thing happened on the video that's on YouTube. But he was also given further instructions to go back, work with the neighborhoods, come to something that works. That has still not happened. So we're still at that state. That instruction has not been followed. I will let the other folks in the neighborhood comment on the specifics of those conversations. Finally, and this slide's important because I think it gets to the overall issue. There were some statements made after that third deferral. We came back to the February commission meeting. There are some statements made that I think are very important that I would like to point out to you that I think get into kind of the heart of this issue. At the February commission meeting, and again, this is on the recording on YouTube if anybody wants to see it. Mr. Reese stated that he made 95% of the concessions. I don't know what math he used to get to that, but that statement can only be true if we operate on the assumption that when a developer buys a piece of land, their privilege to maximize their investment trumps the existing homeowner's rights to expect things to be reasonably close to what was in the zoning and land use. Again, I've had my house since 2016. Some of these folks have been here for 20 or 30 years. We're not expecting this to not be developed. We are expecting it to be developed to the land use and zoning that's been there for a while. At the February commission meeting, Mr. Reese also suggested there would still be some kind of buffer. We've always said, hey, where's the buffer between the high intensity Taylor loop node and this? And if this goes into place, it's going to be gone. He says there's going to be one. As you saw from the previous slides, it's literally across the street from my house. And to be honest with you, there was something funny when the Rummel Road was built. Well, actually, my property line actually goes to the middle of Rummel, so it's not even that far from that. So I don't know what buffer he's thinking of, but there is no difference there. Finally, and this again ties back to that first one, at the February commission meeting, Commissioner Hart said that he's a developer and he believes that everything along Cantrell will eventually be commercial, and they should go ahead and just vote this one through. And that was something that I do think had that in the first comment from Mr. Reese listed here had a big influence on the commission. That statement's not consistent with what we've heard from others, but I would ask the board to give us some clarity if that's really true or not. Because again, we as neighbors and we as homeowners are of the understanding that things will be developed relatively close to the land use plan and the zoning, and that is not what the land use plan currently says. If the intent is to be different than that, we would like to know, because again, there's a lot of things that come into play on that. But that's what we'd also ask for clarity there, because that difference in view between ourselves and the developers is a key part of where this this disagreement's coming from. So with that, I thank you for your time. I'm going to put a PDF of these slides and my contact information in the video description down below. Please feel free to reach out to me if you have any questions, any other points you want clarity on. If you'd like to come by the house and walk and see, I didn't even get into the whole issues of Rummel Road being winding, all that. How close this really is to our home, how close it is to other homes. Feel free to come by. I'd love to have the conversation with you again. So thanks a ton, and we will see you on the 19th.